Hi, Sean. Welcome to the show.
Hi, John. Thank you so much for having me.
That's my pleasure. Sean, John, that's the same name, just a sort of Irish version, isn't it?
Sure is the Irish form of John is Sean, absolutely, and
That's
spelled
right.
the Irish way too, Sean.
Yeah. Well, I was born in Belgium to Hungarian refugee parents, and there my legal name is spelled Jean because in Belgium it's French, so it's Jean. I don't speak French, but I have a French first name, which gets kind of confusing, so I just go by John. I've kidded around if my parents ended up in China for whatever reason. Today I'd be called Chong, which would be kind of cool. Chong
That
Christian.
would be cool. Yeah, absolutely.
And Christian's my middle name. My last name is Hungarian. No one could pronounce it.
Okay,
But I'll let you know when I send the next email to you, and then you'll see what it looks like, and you try and pronounce it. So have fun with that.
will do.
Now, we're going to be talking about one book here. It's called No One Likes Us, But We Do Care. Anatomy of the Philadelphia Sports Fan. And sounds interesting. I knew some things about sports when I was a kid growing up. Hockey, of course, it's a tradition in Montreal to like play hockey, and of course baseball and a little bit of football. Canadian football is very different from American football. And if I'm going to watch football, I'd rather watch American football, and it's just more exciting. But we'll get to that as quickly as we can. But first, Sean, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a podcaster. You live in Philadelphia. What more can we know about you?
Yes, so born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the States. Lived there for the first 35 years of my life. I got married, did the whole family thing. I have a boy and a girl, ages 8 and 5. So we moved out to the suburbs of Philadelphia, about 20 minutes outside. Much more quieter life out here. Um, and yes, I do a podcast. It's called Corner Pub Sports. I've been at it since 2015. So we're approaching on our 10th year anniversary, which is very exciting. We're planning some stuff for that. But it's been a lot of fun. It's basically just myself and three other co-hosts that get together on a Friday night. So instead of going to a bar, we come to my house, which is kind of designed like a studio here. I got a makeshift bar and soundboard underneath and all that
Cool.
and microphones. And we just have a few drinks and talk about sports and entertainment and movies and music. And it turns into basically a Friday night bar conversation. The show can go over 2 hours easily. But it's just us ranting and raving and having a good time. It's been a lot of fun doing it. Yeah,
Excellent. Sounds like
yeah.
a lot of fun, like you said. Yeah. And so you have a family. How old are your kids again?
They're 8 and 5.
Okay. So you were actually starting to do this before you ever had children. And so your kids grew up
Yes,
with dad in the basement having a podcast about sports.
exactly. That's all they know. That's all they know. Yep, exactly.
Excellent. So cool. So cool. Now, your book here, you emphasize do and something about the anatomy of the sports fan. I think I may understand. Is, is there some frustration in Philadelphia about your sports teams?
There certainly is.
Okay.
So the title of the book, No One Likes Us, But We Do Care. The emphasis on the do is because there's a song here. So when the Philadelphia Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2018, their center, Jason Kelsey, arrived at the parade with a giant costume. It's the Mummers costume. So Mummers is a kind of a tradition here in Philadelphia. On New Year's Day, they have the Mummers parade. It's basically these bright, colorful, crazy costumes, and they just strut up and down the city, and then they have a big giant party afterwards. So it's kind of a tradition. It's been in the Philadelphia history for a long time. So he dressed as a mummer and was basically screaming at the microphone, and I'm going to clean it up, but basically he sang the song, which is we're from Philly, no one likes us, we don't care. We're from Philly, effing Philly, no one likes us, we don't care. So that's been kind of the mantra of Philadelphia for a while. It's, you know what, you don't like us, we don't care. You don't like us, we don't care. And the thing is, we really do care. Even though it's a little bit of a portion of the book, I felt that it kind of described the fan base entirely, and I thought it was a perfect title for the book. So we very much do care. We're a very sensitive bunch. We're defensive. When someone comes at us, the city, or one of our sports teams, we get extremely defensive. And the national media is prone to kind of attack Philadelphia fan, and we're quickly to defend that. It's kind of a oxymoron, I guess, or kind of ironic that we say
Mhm.
we don't care, but yet
Yeah.
we certainly do.
Yeah. Well, okay. Beforehand, before we started the show, I told you that I spent most of my adult life in Toronto, and the people there are very frustrated with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And is it something like that? Like there's a passion for this team that just can't seem to win. Mind you, in 2018, you said the Eagles won the Super Bowl, so you must have been very happy about that. But fill me in on what it is that others may not like about the Philadelphia sports teams.
Sure. So first, I mean, Toronto and their frustration with the Maple Leafs not winning for so long, despite the talented teams they've had. That's very much in parallel with what has happened here in Philadelphia with our Philadelphia Flyers. We haven't won since 1975. That's a long time. I was born in '81, so I haven't seen them win one yet. And until the Eagles won in 2018, I wasn't sure we were ever going to see a Super Bowl in this town. The Phillies have been around for over 125 years, and they only have two World Series titles to their name. And the 76ers have a few, they have a handful of titles, but it's been futile since, I mean, really for the most part, since the early 90s. They've had a few playoff appearances here and there, consecutive playoff appearances, but it's been overall frustrating with that organization as well. So, I guess because of from the outsider perspective, why people be frustrated with us or aggravated with the Philadelphia sports fan is, I think, due to some of those frustrations with our teams, we tend to be a little bit impatient, and we can be rowdy. We can definitely be a rowdy fan base. I talk about it in the book. We've had behaviors in the past which aren't pretty. We've thrown batteries at a player. We've when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, a guy ate horse dung off the ground. Don't ask why. I'm sure alcohol is a part of that. We don't
Yes.
understand it. But all these things have one thing in common. It was a very small amount of people, or one person, or two people, who did this. But yet, for some reason, it garnered national attention, and I guess in some cases, worldwide attention.
Hmm.
And it's reflected on the entire Philadelphia fan base. So that's frustrating for us because that's not fair. That's not who the Philadelphia fan really is. Now, are we a little rough and tumble? Are we impatient? Yes. Are we all the type to throw batteries? Are we all the type to throw snowballs at Santa? That urban legend that there is truth to that, but there's more to that story than just fans just threw snowballs at a drunk Santa. First of all, it was late 1960s, and we had Philadelphia still they still hold that up to us.
Wow.
The national media does, and outsiders. It's brought up all the time, and that is very frustrating because that's not who the Philadelphia fan really is. So it's funny you mentioned about Toronto being so passionate. The word passion is probably, if I could have used that more in this book, I would have, but I didn't want to overuse it
Sure.
because that adjective describes the Philadelphia fan base exceptionally, and that's the same case with Toronto. Absolutely, a passionate fan base is what we are in
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
in Jazz.
Well, the Toronto passion is very different from the Montreal passion. I grew up in Montreal, and when the Montreal Canadiens win the Stanley Cup, or if they lose the Stanley Cup, on St. Catherine Street, there's going to be a riot. They're going to overturn police cars and set them on fire. Different kind of passion. Toronto, they yell and scream a lot, and then they go home and get drunk. So it's a different kind of passion, but still passion.
That's great. I think we're a mixture of both.
That's
We
right.
we're going to be inebriated for sure, but there might be a car fire or two.
Yeah.
You know,
So, when I worked on a show called Million Dollar Critic, and one of the episodes was shot in Philadelphia, I'm a very curious person. And like I said, I've been to Philadelphia. I remember playing there in the 80s. I wasn't, I kind of forget, it was a Legion Hall or something like that. The next day we were off somewhere else. So I didn't spend much time there. But when I worked on the show, the host he was from England, and he went on and on about the violence in Philadelphia, such a dangerous city, and he's going to be so scared. I think he played it up a lot. So Fine.
Mhm.
I go to Google and I looked up how violent is Philadelphia, and I found that, well, there's a lot more murders there than in Toronto. I think the population at the time in Philadelphia is 1.5 million. Toronto's 2.5, and it's like 10 times more murders. Is Philadelphia a dangerous place, and does some of that play into the fan base?
That's a great question. So yeah, it's there's parts of Philadelphia that aren't you don't want to walk in there at nighttime.
Mhm.
Absolutely. North Philly's a little rough. West Philadelphia, parts of West Philadelphia are pretty rough. Um, but overall, I mean, the northeast part of Philadelphia, and it sounds like a little section, but northeast Philadelphia is actually a pretty big section. You're probably, I mean, generally pretty safe there. Center City, they've cleaned it up a lot over the years. Center City is pretty safe. So they South Philadelphia, it's kind of a, um, I guess the best way to describe the city of Philadelphia is it's a big city, but it's a small town vibe. So like South Philadelphia, it's a big time Italian American population.
Mhm.
That's the vibe there, and everyone seems to know everyone, and and it's that kind of thing. So I think I mean even South Philadelphia, I think mostly is pretty safe. But yes, I mean there's definitely definitely
Yeah,
shootings.
yeah.
And the police have kind of lost a little control of the city. They do a lot of those the car what are they drifting the car drifting in the middle of intersections and races and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But the thing is like and maybe it's getting a little out of control or it seems like it's getting out of control, especially with social media. You see it all.
Yeah, that's the thing, yeah.
But I remember growing up and hearing stories like, with my uncle telling me, oh yeah, I did some drag racing down this road and
Mm.
I did this and that. I'm like, okay, so that it's not like it's new. That's
No,
kind of always been a thing, but maybe it's just getting more publicity because of the social media aspect of life in general right now. But
right.
I mean overall, I mean, do I feel safer where I live now? Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, Philadelphia, it definitely has its bad parts for sure.
Sure. Well,
Does that have a part in the fan base?
mm,
Um, I gotta be honest. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna say no because only because of the fact that a lot of times, and I hate to segment things like this, but like tickets for games aren't cheap. A Philadelphia Eagles, game is you're probably spending $200, $300 to sit at a game. The people who live in these kind of, I hate to say poorer areas, but it's the truth. They're not going to Eagles games. So like that part, I can't really coincide with one another. Hockey, basketball, I mean, everything, even baseball. I remember, growing up, $3 to sit up in the upper level in a baseball game. You're lucky if you can get in for $25, $30 now. So I don't know if that's necessarily fair to coincide the bad portions of Philadelphia with the bad persona that the Philadelphia fan gets.
mhm.
Um, I mean, there might be portions of that, but I think overall it's probably a little unfair to say that.
Yeah, I guess I just was meaning if there's a high energy there, so the people who can't afford those tickets aren't actually doing necessarily crimes, but they're all stoked and they got their raw energy going. And
Mm.
Philadelphia has got a wonderful history. It's a very important city in the United States. I mean, some historical things took place there. You should be very proud of Philadelphia, like Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, New York. These are important cities, not just in America, but in the world, I think, personally.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and I do bring this up in the book. There's far worse that happen in the parking lots of other cities in the United States during games, namely L.A., Los Angeles, San Francisco, um, Detroit. There are where people were getting shot after games, getting beaten to death.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen here. That does not happen you might have an incident where someone throws a beer at someone. It might be a little fight, but there hasn't been a death in a parking lot before an Eagles game or a Phillies game or whatever, what have you.
Yeah.
It's that I can remember. That I can remember.
Sure.
It's
And there's
it,
soccer
it's
games,
it's
I think, in South America that go a little bit screwy after a while. So,
oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. In your podcast, do you cover any other teams? Like, for instance, when the Chicago Cubs won after how long, and they finally won. I remember everybody was freaking out over that. And being a bit of a baseball fan, I felt it. I understood the pleasure they must have had.
Yeah, absolutely. We cover everything. I mean, we do. It is Philadelphia centric. We start off with hitting our Philadelphia teams, but then we do a segment because it's a bar type atmosphere. So we do a segment called "While You Were Drunk," and in that segment, it's stories that national stories that maybe you missed or you didn't really quite know much about, and we hit those stories.
Hmm.
But yeah, definitely. I mean, especially in the case now, you got the baseball playoffs happening right now, so we'll definitely talk about that. The LA Dodgers and the Yankees in the World Series, and and any sport. I mean, if it's the NBA Finals, Super Bowl, we definitely talk about other teams for sure. So any major big stories, we definitely cover.
Okay.
Uh, yeah.
Uh, I see here the anatomy of the Philadelphia sports fan. Do you talk about frustration of fans saying, "Oh, this year for sure, the Flyers or the Phillies are going to win," and then they don't, and they start all over again next year? Is that kind of what's happening there?
It's definitely definitely part of it. Every year we look at it. I mean, for instance, last year the Philadelphia Eagles started off 10-1, and they lost 6 out of the last 7 games, limped into the playoffs, and got blown out in the first round of the playoffs.
Mm.
And it's like, wow, they look like a team that was destined, and then they were bounced and they were done, and we were left scratching our head. Actually, people were calling for the coaches firing after that. So
Hmm.
that happens often here. The Philadelphia Phillies had the best record in baseball this year up until about the following the All-Star game. Then they had to slide and they kind of fell apart. And you start to see these, chinks in the armor, and you're starting to see things, and you're like, I don't like what's happening here. Same thing. To get into the playoffs, get bounced in the first round by the Mets. So
Yeah.
that's definitely a part of the anatomy of the Philadelphia sports fan. And there's actually a section in this book that kind of dives into worst defeats. The things
Yeah.
that kind of broke us growing up. I mean, I have one, that still haunts me to this day. That anytime I think about it, I'm like, oh, the sinking feeling in my stomach about this loss. It's the 2002 NFC title game, Eagles, Buccaneers, and it was the last game at Veterans Stadium. And leading up to the game, it was nothing but, oh, the Buccaneers. And I apologize, I'm going to do Fahrenheit here, but the Buccaneers have never lost below, or have never won a game below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Never won, never won. What do? They come in here and whoop us, and it was horrible. And it was like, we're going to the Super Bowl, we're going to the Super Bowl, and then all the air was just let out, and I can never remember being as deflated after that loss. And but that's just part of the makeup. I mean, the way I kind of look at it is, well, we got through that, we can get through anything. Like any tough loss, it kind of makes you harder on the outside.
Hmm.
And that's part of the anatomy of the Philadelphia fan for sure. That's probably why we have such a hard exterior. But the truth is, I mean, we're not bad people. We really aren't.
Hmm. Okay, I believe you. How many sports teams are there? Is it the Eagles, the Phillies, the Flyers, and in basketball, but I'm very unfamiliar with that.
Sure. We
What's
had
your
the
team there?
Sixers. We had the 76ers.
76ers. Okay. How are
Yes.
they doing?
So they're starting off tomorrow. I don't know when this is going to air. I apologize. Wednesday night, the 23rd of October, they start. The Flyers just started a couple weeks last week. They're not off to a good start. But there's high aspirations for the Sixers. They went out and got the biggest free agent on the market. So they have two really talented guys leading the charge there, in Joel Embiid and Paul George, and they have a pretty good up and comer outside shooter in Tyrese Maxey, and a good defender, and a high octane guy. He's energetic and all over the place. So there's high aspirations for the Sixers this year. Um, and it's funny. We always have this debate, like, what's the best sport in this town? And Eagles, football, for some reason, whatever reason it is always the top of the chart. Like, it's always number one. It's always the first page of the newspaper. But I got to tell you, like, Philadelphia is definitely a basketball town. But when the Flyers are in the playoffs, like, I challenge anybody to find a sport that's more intense in the playoffs than playoff hockey, and that could be anywhere, especially in Toronto. Oh my goodness. But yeah, it's so energetic and hot. It's just intense, and not to say the other sports aren't in the playoffs. There's just something different about playoff hockey. It's just it takes you to another level. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. How far does the fan base of Philadelphia teams stretch in terms of Pennsylvania? Do you know of fans in cities maybe 100 miles away that just feel that they're part of the Philly team of sports fans?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's I would say, it goes west of Philadelphia. I would say to about Harrisburg, which is the state capital, which is about an hour and a half west. And then you
Mhm.
start getting into like Pittsburgh territory.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Steelers. And even in that territory you start to see them. And then in New Jersey, like the central part of New Jersey on down, will all be mostly be Philadelphia fans.
Yeah.
There's actually a fan that's spotlighted in my book. His name's Eric Emmanuel. He's known as E-Rock. He's a big time social media. He hates the word influencer. He hates that word.
Hmm.
That's ultimately what he is. Best way to describe him. He's from North Jersey. He's from the northern part of New Jersey, which is usually Giants, New York Giants country. But he grew up as a Philadelphia sports fan, and he's one of the biggest fans out there right now. And so yeah, I mean, it definitely spreads out. Philadelphia fans also travel really well. If one of our teams is on the road in California, or I mean, we had a game in Brazil. We took over that stadium in
Wow.
Brazil. Like it's it's
Wow.
crazy. So we travel very well. And there's always people in those towns that meet up with the fans that travel and want to cheer on the Philadelphia teams, even though they live in, say, Denver or Seattle or wherever, what have you. But yeah, it's pretty neat. It's pretty cool how the fan base kind of it's like a family. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here in Nova Scotia, there's no professional team. So, but I've seen people here wearing a lot of Boston Red Sox and Boston Bruins shirts and hats and stuff. And I wonder how they latch onto that. Why Boston? And that's why I think, there could be people not even living in Pennsylvania who would be big Philly fans or Eagles fans, perhaps. Do you ever speak to people from further away that just love Philadelphia sports teams?
So I know there's a fan who he goes by I think his name's UK Phillies on Twitter or X. He lives in the United Kingdom.
Hmm.
They don't have baseball there. Like, and he's a huge Phillies fan. It's crazy. How that came to be, I have no idea. But I find those stories so cool. Like, to find these people who are over the pond or say in Canada who, so for some reason, they lashed onto a Philadelphia team. I mean, I
Yeah,
guess I kind of understand it. Say, you're growing up and your favorite player was Eric Lindros.
yeah,
Well,
sure.
I guess
Yeah,
you're going to latch on to
yeah,
Philadelphia Flyers.
yeah. That
Um,
could do it.
I actually have a Canadian what's the word I was going to say? I'm sorry. Yeah, he was born in Canada. Brian Prop
Hmm.
played hockey back in the '80s for the Philadelphia Flyers and played for the Canadian national team.
Right. So there you go. There's Canadians that end up playing. I mean, the days are gone where Montreal Canadiens had players who were from Montreal, and Toronto had people from Toronto. That's long gone. I think when did that stop happening? The 50s, 60s, maybe?
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate,
Yeah.
especially when the draft became such a big proponent, and even more recently, I mean, teams are looking at guys from Germany and other countries,
Yeah.
especially Russia,
Yeah.
to come over and play hockey right now, and it's for the NHL. It's such a well-paying organization right now, I
Sure.
guess I should say, that people want to come and play. Yeah, it kind of takes away from the city that you're playing in. Yeah, you're representing Toronto, but you're not even Canadian. What's going on here? So it is kind of funny how that works, but at the same time, I guess it's just the way all the sports are now.
Yeah, it's a big business, and there's a lot of money that changes hands. Sometimes I wonder, how do these companies, who basically these teams are companies, how do they stay in business when they don't win for so long?
Yeah, I mean, so some of the sports will do a salary cap, so it's kind of shared revenue. Even the NFL will do a shared revenue thing, based on TV contracts. Hockey kind of tries to do the same thing with the TV contracts, even though it's not as lucrative as the NFL is. But they still do the shared revenue. Baseball doesn't have a salary cap. However, they do the luxury tax. So if you spend so much money, you have to pay extra to whatever. But that portion gets a little hairy because baseball is probably the one sport because of the no salary cap that teams do tend to leave their cities more often. It's a shame. It's a sad situation, but the Oakland Athletics are probably leaving Oakland. They most likely played their last game in Oakland a couple weeks ago, and those fans are heartbroken, and they're looking at Las Vegas
Yeah.
as a destination spot, and
And it's known
um,
to happen. I mean, the Brooklyn Dodgers, right? But that's a
the
long time
Montreal
ago.
Montreal Expos,
Montreal
right?
Expos, yeah. Oh, I was so sad to hear that they
Yeah,
were gone,
they had
and they
so
didn't
much
go anywhere. They
talent.
just ended.
Yeah, well, they ended up relocating to Washington to become the Washington Nationals.
Okay, did they?
Yeah,
Okay, well,
and it was a shame because I mean they had so much talent on that team. Guys like Larry Walker and Pedro Martinez and Randy Johnson, and they just traded all those guys away and just couldn't keep them, and they just fell apart. It's a shame.
so what else can we learn from your book? For instance, how long is it?
The book is it's 8 chapters and it's 260 I'm sorry, 230 pages.
Okay.
It's an easy read. It's kind of bigger font, it's I guess 12. And that's one of the parts of the feedback that I've gotten is people have appreciated how easy it is to read, and they feel like it flows pretty well, which I obviously am happy about. As a first time author, I'm that's kind of what I was aiming for when I first started writing it. Which was back, I started outlining it, and actually, in writing terms, I guess it didn't take me too long, but July of 2023, I was actually boarding a plane to go to Seattle for a trip. And I'm like, you know what? I'm doing this. It was in my head for a little while that I
Mhm.
wanted to do this. I'm like, I'm going to outline it. By the time the plane landed, I had my outline done, who I wanted to talk to, everything. It was pretty neat. So, and I started writing it, I think, on that trip. And I finished the first draft at the end of February. So, I guess in writer's terms, it did not take me long to finish my first draft. And of course, it was edited several times and, all that stuff. Um, that's one of the things that I've gotten in the feedback was that it flows pretty well and that it's easy to read, and people felt enthralled by it. They felt that like they can feel the passion through the pages. And that was the greatest compliment I can get because that was my goal.
Yeah.
So when I first started writing it, I started being real descriptive, and not there's anything wrong with that, but it didn't feel like me. Like it didn't feel like something I'm trying to convey to the reader. So I kind of simplified it a little bit and made it more just from the heart. Just how am I feeling? That's what I'm going to put down.
Yeah.
And that's how it comes across. I feel like I feel like it's at least what I hope is that you when you're reading it, you feel like it's coming from my mouth to your ears, and
Okay.
or to your eyes, I guess in this case.
Sure.
Um, so yeah, and that was truly the greatest compliment that I think I've gotten so far is that they just feel like they can feel the passion from the book.
Okay. You mentioned that people to talk to. Did you interview any players at all for the book?
I sure did. I talked to, like I said, Brian Prop. Um, so he was excellent. He's like I said, a long time Philadelphia Flyer, national hockey team, national Canadian national hockey player. Um, and he was excellent, and he's a great guy. I talked to Lenny Dykstra, who played for the New York Mets and then later the Philadelphia Phillies. He's had quite an eventful post-playing career. It's not it's not private or anything, but he spent some time in prison and he's had some rough patches in his life, and he's doing well now. He's cleaned up, and so he's a very interesting interview. I because I wanted to talk to him about the 1993 Phillies team, which ended up losing to the Toronto Blue Jays in the
Hmm.
'93 World
Oh,
Series.
right. Yeah, I remember that. My son was
Mitch
very
Williams,
happy about that.
I'm sure he was. Yeah, Mitch Williams giving up the home run and broke our hearts, and Joe Carter with his arms raised, running around the bases.
Oh
But
yeah.
so I wanted to get kind of Lenny Dykstra's perspective on what the team was like that year and what it was like after that loss, and got his input. Scott Air, who was a member of the 2008 World Series winning team for the Phillies, he was a relief pitcher. So
Oh yeah.
people kind of forget about the relief pitchers in baseball, and he's one of the most interesting people that I know. He first of all, he can talk your ear off, and he's so entertaining, and he has so many stories, some of which I could not share in the book. But the stories I share in the book are highly entertaining from him. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think here. So Bob Cooney does the forward. He was a longtime sports writer. He covered the 76ers and then went into sports talk radio. So he does the forward. I have Ed Kratz of Sports Illustrated, who covers the Eagles for Sports Illustrated. So he's involved with the book. So yeah, it was a lot of fun talking to some of these athletes and writers and other fans that also took part in the book.
I guess being that you've been doing this for 10 years and you specify Philadelphia teams, the teams and the people on the organizations must know about you. Would that be accurate to assume that?
I think so, to a degree for sure. It's funny. I guess it was about 2 years ago. I was at an event. It was a charity event, and there was a lot of former athletes that were there. And actually, Scott Air, who I was just talking about, was there, and I was hanging out with him, and he started telling some of the other players about it. And I remember the one guy going, "Oh yeah, I know that guy. Actually, I follow you on Twitter." And sure enough, I looked. I'm like, "Yeah, you do. That's
Hmm.
right." I'm like, it was kind of cool, to have moments like that. And there was a few other guys who had already been on our show that were there, and they were telling their older, former teammates about it. So that was pretty neat to see. And some of the guys will actually tune into our show. Like we do it live. It's not edited.
Okay.
Sometimes I wish it was. But we'll have the live chat going, and it's very interactive. Whoever wants to ask a question or bring up a point or argue or whatever, they'll do that. And I can see, like, oh, check that out. So and so is watching us. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's pretty neat how it happens. I'm sure they don't appreciate everything we say, but I think we're pretty fair
Yeah.
in our analysis and so on, and our thoughts about the current state of Philadelphia sports.
Yeah. 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 I watch different types of shows that go they're live. There's a side chat, and it's very interactive, and I enjoy that. And when you start, getting known as a regular there, and you have these online friends that you'll never meet, and it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. It's that part of the technology turns me on. Do you get super chats?
So I'm sorry, like, what do you mean by?
Well, super chats, I don't have much money, so I don't participate in that. It's when you're so involved in the show, you're watching it live, and you say, "I'm going to send you $10 or something like that." It's a super chat.
Okay. Okay, so like it's kind of like a Patreon or something like that, I guess.
It is, but you can just on the spur of the moment, I'm really enjoying your show. I'm going to send you $10, and
No,
it
no,
shows up on the thing, and you go, "Oh, well, thank you very much for the money." I guess.
oh wow, yeah, I was unfamiliar with that.
Okay. They're called
Yeah.
super chats. It took me a while. I'm 67, and it takes me a while to learn the lingo of the young people, I guess. But it
Oh,
makes sense, if you're really behind, you're going to support the channel. Do you have a Patreon account for your channel?
we do. Yes, we do.
Hmm.
I haven't really been active on it lately. Probably been about a year since I've even visited it, to be honest with you. So
Hmm.
I don't know, for some reason we do have some sponsors,
Yeah,
that kind of help to pay the bills, I guess, and
sure, of
keep the
course.
show
Yeah.
running. So I guess because of that, I kind of let that go by the wayside.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, the super chats thing sounds pretty interesting. I might have to look into that
Yeah,
for
look into
sure.
that. I guess you do it in that space of yours.
We do. So you're kind of getting a different angle tonight. But behind, like, I'm usually facing this way. There's another camera that's on the ceiling here that overlooks the other guys.
Hmm.
And then I have, like, my jerseys behind me, and some autographed pictures and memorabilia behind me. But yeah, this is the space. This is the bar that we do. My friend and I built this. So I think I moved in here in 2015. So the show was already happening at my old residence in 2015. While we moved, we temporarily moved the show to one of my co-hosts' house, and then in the meantime, a friend of mine and I built this bar, and we actually like drilled holes so you can put the wires through and
Yeah, yeah.
all that stuff. So yeah,
Oh,
and the bar rail here is actually custom made, goes around the entire length of the bar, and it's all the Philadelphia team logos and stadiums,
makes
and
sense.
it's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
it's been a fun it's a good hangout for sure. Puts you in the mood to talk some sports.
So you were a sports fan from a young age, I guess. You grew up just loving sports and you just never left that go.
Absolutely. I remember growing up in the background, throwing up a wiffle ball and hitting with a bat and pretending I was Mike Schmidt.
That's okay.
And
That's all right.
yeah, I remember just emulating these guys that looked up as heroes. And obviously you get older, you become a little more jaded, or I guess you look at things differently. But I'm still a sports fanatic.
Yeah. I mean, part of me
Uh,
that hasn't grown up in music kept me young and, I love music. So I'm grateful for that. So it's kept me, you know, mentally buoyant, I should say.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, John, I'd love to ask you questions because preparing for the show, I was on your YouTube channel, which is excellent, and I was listening to some of your music, and I'm also a musician as well. I play guitar
Hmm.
and the drums,
Okay.
mess around with the bass a little bit. I was in a band for a few years in the from 2008 to 2013. We had two albums out, and we were
Oh, really?
kind of touring the tri-state area, and
Interesting. Good.
it was fun. It was like hard rock, teeter
Original
on.
music?
Yeah, it was original stuff. But then after that, and even before that, I would just kind of build a song by myself. And so your YouTube channel, I'm watching, I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool because like I can, kind of get with that because like you kind of did the same thing I do. So I wanted to ask you, when you're writing a song, being that you're playing multiple instruments, what is your first stepping stone? Like, is it guitar? Is it a melody in your head, or like
It would be
piano?
guitar. It would be
Guitar.
guitar, chord progressions, melody, and then the words either come or they don't. And if I choose to record it, then I do it one part at a time. Now, when I was in a band, of course, everybody contributed their parts to it. And depending on which band I was in, um, would would make me either produce it and arrange it fully, or I would work with musicians who are capable of arranging and producing their own parts. So the best band I ever was in was a band called Jewel's Hannon, and the musicians in that band were very clever. And all I had to do was introduce the song and say, "This is it." And then the bass player took over, the drum took over. And for a while, we had a very good keyboard player. So I didn't have to tell them much. But when I was in a band called Deadbeat, I basically told everybody what to do.
Okay.
So it really depends. And of course, Baroshi fame is, if you ever got that far with my music, that's industrial music where we play found objects. And some people thought I lost my mind. Um, I didn't play guitar for like 4 years, and during that time, people didn't even know I played guitar. I was just banging on metal and drums and all kinds of stuff, and it was pretty scary stuff. But we actually got quite popular, and we ended up playing in Philadelphia
Hmm.
and Pittsburgh and Cleveland and all kinds of places, and but mainly to punk and avant-garde kind of people.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
got tired of that because I just wanted to get back to playing music again.
Yeah.
It's just that it caught on and everyone loved it and it started making money. So I figured, well, I may as well do that. But it was not that satisfying after a while.
That's interesting though. Like, yeah, it just caught on because it was something different.
Yeah.
You know, I guess I'm guessing 80s or 90s. This
Yes,
was
it started with a concert promoter in Toronto who had done some work for before, backing up bands. So when I was in other bands before, and he called me up, and so some band was coming from England, and we would be the support act. So he called me up and he asked me to do something on my own. He knew that I was very creative, inventive, and I did wacky, weird things. And I had 5 weeks to put something together. And his words were, "Do something that's never been done before." Oh, geez. Okay.
no
So I
pressure.
so I did, and that video could be seen on my YouTube channel, and it would be Veroshi Fame at the Diamond Club. If you're really interested, Seek that one out. It's somewhere in there, hundreds of videos at the Diamond Club in 1986, August 14th. I didn't know someone in the crowd videotaped it, but they videotaped the whole show. And then I saw it afterwards, and there was like 4,000 people there. And after the first song, they went bonkers. And they were laying roses at my wife's feet. She was the lead singer at the time. And the sound people pulled the stops. They got so the sound and lights people pulled the stops. They got so involved in this that they were making all these special effects. I was remember being on the stage and seeing lasers and smoke and all kinds of weird stuff going on. They blew their load on us, and the main band from England was furious.
Oh
They couldn't
yeah.
be mad at me because I didn't ask for it, but boy, they were thinking of suing the sound and light company because
Oh my
those
goodness.
effects were for them, not for us.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, but
That had to be so cool. Like, I mean, as a musician, especially when you're doing original music, you finish a song and you get a roaring applause. I don't. There's very few things that are better than that. Like,
yeah,
truthfully, you know what? This is art that we worked on, and these people are appreciating it.
yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
It's very strange music. So, but they were there to see Psychic TV, which is a pretty unusual band from England, kind of experimental. So we were even more experimental than them. So that's what convinced me to quit the band I was in, which was fairly conventional, bass, guitar, drums, and keyboards, you know. I was the lead singer. And they were quite upset with me that I chose this avant-garde thing that really didn't really exist. It was meant to be a one-off thing. I called up a drummer from another band and I said, look, my wife has agreed to do the vocals. She's never sang in her life. And I need at least one other person. I know you're a good drummer. Will you do this with me? And he goes, yeah, sure. Sounds great. Okay, I have some more questions. Um, you and I kind of look similar. I have a Germanic background. You have a Germanic background. We're both white. Uh, would you wear all black? Oh yeah, sure, I'll wear all black. Okay, all right. One more question. Would you shave your head? He goes, "Oh, okay, fine, I'll shave my head." So, so he shaved his head for the show, and so we're on either side of my wife's in the middle. She's nervous as anything, never stepped foot on a stage in her life.
Goodness.
So she's just standing there, kind of just reciting these words, kind of half singing. And he's banging on things, I'm banging on things, and we look like twins. So the image, when I saw the video going, oh, I see why people love this. Yeah.
That's
So I
awesome. That's
did
pretty
something
cool.
that's never been done before, I guess.
That's pretty awesome.
But eventually it got on my nerves because really, I like to play guitar and sing.
Mm.
So now I settled into the blues now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the cover songs on your YouTube channel are excellent. Yeah, it was pretty interesting for sure. I probably just watched about 10 videos that you have up there,
Mhm.
so it was awesome.
Then I bought a looper and I just started working with my looper and doing all kinds of psychedelic stuff.
Yeah.
And the looper songs I did during the pandemic. And I would sit down and say, I want to do another thing. I have no idea what I'm about to do, but here goes. Turn on the camera, and whatever I do is just all made up on the spot, you know. So that's what makes those really fun.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some songs in there I don't know about. Should listen to them. Go, hey, I could turn that into a song.
Yeah,
But
you
now
never
I
know.
write books. I haven't composed anything. I think 2019 was the last time I actually composed music.
Okay.
And I may
Okay.
not compose music again. I don't know. I love writing books now. That's what I like to do. And I write fiction. So that's my thing. Are you thinking about writing fiction?
I'm right now, because that's actually one of the questions people are asking me, what's your next book? What's your next book? I'm like, I haven't even thought about that yet.
Hmm.
Honestly. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I I've been told that I'm, pretty twisted in the head sometimes. So I'm sure I can come up with something that would fill some pages and get some minds going, I think. But at this stage I really don't have any plans to do anything
Hmm.
in the future. But I I very well could. I
It's a
could
whole
definitely.
different ball game. I mean, I wrote two nonfiction books, and though they're not the same topic as yours, but when you're writing nonfiction, unless you feel like you're going to lie, you have to stick to the facts and then make them interesting sounding. But in fiction, it's what it goes all different places. You can have an outline and follow it, and next thing you know, your characters are going off somewhere and doing something. Wait a minute, where are you going? Oh, that sounds interesting. And now the character tells you what they want. At least it worked that way for me. And some of the people that I talk to agree that when they write fictions, my characters started doing something. I don't know what. So I figured I'd follow them and see where's this going. Oh, that's interesting. Didn't even plan for that to happen. You know how many
Or
people
you,
I speak to who are like me decide they're going to write a fiction book and then it ends up a trilogy, you know?
oh yeah, they just keep
It
going.
just
Oh,
keeps
I
going and
enjoyed it
going and
that
going.
much. Let's go. Yeah, one of the more interesting books I've read in a while. And I'm sorry that the name's gonna the name's slipping me right now, but it was Jim Carrey wrote a book, and he took actual friends and actors and put them in fictional spots and made this crazy stuff. And you're like, okay, how much of this is true? How much is it? And obviously, it ends in such a crazy way. You're like, okay, well, I know that's not real, but aspects of the story as you're going through, I'm like, did this actually happen in his life, or is he just kind of just spitballing and kind of making it his own? It was pretty surreal. It was pretty wild to read.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, even in that sense, just having fun with it, actual figures and making them do things that they want. I guess like a Quentin Tarantino movie, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Takes figures like Hitler, and then turns him into, kills him off in his most absurd way. It's crazy.
Yeah. I speak to a lot of authors here, and the fictional stories are interesting how they come about that. Someone wrote a book on assassinating baby Hitler. We've all thought about it, but this person actually wrote a book like that.
It's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So how's sales for you?
So far, they're okay. I didn't really know what to expect, honestly, going into this. Obviously, you dream and bestseller,
Mm,
it's like, it's a chance. The thing is, being a Philadelphia book, one of the things was, okay, it's a niche thing, right? So
mm,
like only Philadelphia fans are going to buy it. Well, it hasn't been necessarily the case, and that was kind of something else I aimed to do. And I didn't want it only to be for Philadelphia fans. I wanted to be for fans of other teams that wanted to know more about Philadelphia, or maybe non-sports fans who maybe were intrigued by the Philadelphia fan and wanted to know. Um, and I feel like it's written in a way where like I'm not being overly like I'm not describing things as if you're supposed to already know what I'm talking about. I do describe the things as if you're someone who's learning about sports and wants to know about this topic or player or whatever. So, I don't just dive right in and say, "Oh yeah, Lenny Dykstra, 1993 World Series team," and blah 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 blah. I kind of go a little, I give a little intro and what he did, and so that was definitely in my mind when I was writing the book. To kind of make it easier for everyone. So I didn't want to because I wanted to make it that small niche group that was only going to be the ones to buy the book. Would I like the sales to be better? Absolutely. But so far I can't say I'm not happy about it. I'm definitely pleased that
mhm.
as many eyes have seen it as they have so far, and it's only been out for a few weeks. So,
Okay.
but and I for doing podcasts like yours, and I can't thank you enough. Trying to get the word out is definitely key.
Yeah.
It's just I had the podcast, which my own podcast, which I should say, that we obviously promoted on and our socials and stuff, and we have a decent reach and everything, but just to get it out there in other ways.
Well, now with
It's
your podcast, I guess you mentioned your book and you may be able to sell it through there if you got people that are subscribed to your channel, perhaps members of your Patreon account. I can't see why they wouldn't want to get your book if they already like your show.
Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of cool. A mutual friend, my co-host and I, was writing to me, and he said he had a football practice for his kid last week, and he was mentioning something about the book being out, and someone said, "Wait, you know that guy?" He's like, "Oh yeah, that's the guy I went to school with." He goes, "I've been seeing that all over Facebook. Like, I got to check this book out." That was kind of cool. I was like, "Wow, here's
Yeah.
someone I don't know who this person is," and I'm like, "That's really cool." So, that just that word is starting to get out a little bit makes me pretty happy. So, but I'm doing all I can to try to promote it, and get the word out. And because I,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you feel the same way, especially about music. You are your own worst critic. But the
Mhm.
feedback that I've gotten has been such positive feedback that it makes me feel good, and it's
Good.
just building confidence in me wanting to say, you know what, you got to get this.
Yeah. Yeah. So your podcast is healthy. It's vibrant. It's going to continue on as far as you can see for quite some time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've talked about it. Like I said, we're approaching 10 years, and it was like, all right, after 10 years, are we done? And I don't think that's going to happen because it's kind of, like you said, the show's still vibrant. It's still color. People are still tuning in and downloading it and enjoying it. So, I mean, I don't see it ending. Because the other thing too, it's like, what else Friday night. That's all we know now. We've been
Well,
doing it for 10 years. That's what we do. What else are we gonna do?
it's not that different from a band practice, you know.
No, no, it's not.
You
A
know,
lot less
I
drama.
have two best friends. We started a band in 79. We broke up in 82 and we went different ways. We got back together in 90 and we played together until 2005. And the only reason was because one person moved far away. And we still share tracks over the internet, and we've done Zoom calls, and there's various programs. We tried one out. It didn't work very well, but where you could actually jam online with each other. And if we were living in the same place, we'd still be playing together because we're friends. And I take it that's what you're doing.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. I mean, yeah, we're all friends. We talk all week long on text threads.
Oh
We
yeah.
don't necessarily see each other at times because we do kind of live 20, 25 minutes plus apart. But yeah, I mean, we get together on those Friday nights, and we get together actually before the show. We'll sit around a bonfire and talk, listen to some music, and then we'll do the show and hang
Super.
out afterwards. So it's same thing. Like you said, it's band practice. You guys are just hanging out and
Yeah.
enjoying each other's company.
Oh yeah. I miss that. I really feel what you're doing is pretty cool. I think it's been a lot of fun. Well, if you want to have a final word on your book and perhaps let people know why they should buy it, where it's available, you want to do that?
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
So no one likes this, but we do care. The Anatomy of a Philadelphia Sports Fan is available on Amazon. You can get it in hardcover, paperback, or Kindle. It's available in select stores in the Philadelphia area, select bookstores. But yeah, the book, like I said earlier in the podcast, even if you're not a Philadelphia sports fan, I think you're going to enjoy it because I think you're going to learn a lot more about the Philadelphia sports fan than what has been fed to you by national media and maybe some outsiders. You're going to learn a lot more about us, that we're not as brash and nasty as you think we are. Do we have our moments? Yes. And in the book, it's the good, the bad, the ugly. I mean, it's all there. I don't pull any punches. I don't hide things. It is, our past is our past, but our future is pretty good too. Our future in Philadelphia sports and being the Philadelphia sports fan is a positive one in my opinion, especially when you compare to other fan bases who don't get as much. Hate to use the word, but don't get as much hate as we do. It's unfair, unjust, and that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. All right. Sounds great. Sean, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And then we've been talking now, where is it now? Almost an hour. And I don't generally have these kind of long conversations, but this one was well worth it. I've really enjoyed your company. And, if you write anything else or if you feel the want to talk some more, hey, feel free to look me up and we'll connect again maybe next year sometime.
That's great, John. I appreciate it so much. It was great talking to you, and I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this a lot.
All right. Well, you take care of yourself, Sean.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, and if you like what I do here on Tell Me About Your Book, then I invite you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment if you wish. And if you are an author, I would sure love to hear from you. Until such time, keep on writing, and remember to be kind to one another.
What makes a breakbeat live is when it makes your backbone twitch and your ass go into a spasm.